Hi, I'm Tom Smith. I'm at the MHCLG, or Mahoka logo. I've spent a long time working data and working digital and AI and so on. And I think I'm really up for that question about what's the value of open data. And I'm really up for questions about what next. But I'm going to talk a little bit first about AI in local government and the work that we're doing in the department to accelerate and support use cases, public services, understanding what citizens are looking for, consulting with them, bringing in a whole bunch of things which are partly technical, but big time about people and so on. And I'm going to start with two things which are probably very familiar to this audience. In January, the DCIT published various things, including the AI Opportunities Action Plan from Matt Clifford, who's now the PM's advisor on AI. Immediately, we published as well part of the response back with forward from the Prime Minister with that particular quote, which you'll see on pretty much anything that anyone in government talks about in AI. And then this week, Tony Blair Institute, who Laura kind of plugged and talked about earlier, have a very interesting report on reimagining the local government with some interesting examples and some eye-watering numbers. So an annual time saving worth $8 billion across local authorities in England and Wales, equivalent to about 380 million hours, 325 quid per household. That's per year. So these are sort of big numbers, and you can go and look at any report out there and there will be some eye-watering numbers. I think what is interesting, and we'll kind of unpick a little bit, is we're starting to see examples of that in pilots in terms of time saving from actual people just working on their day jobs, trying to improve or speed up what they're doing, trying to improve the kind of the information flow and so on. And we're getting numbers which are stacking up against those sorts of things. Do they extrapolate? Let's find out. But I think we're sort of starting to see some plausible kind of pilots and results. But what does a number like that look like in terms of a real service? So I'm going to illustrate with some of the work that the department's been doing on planning, and particularly digital planning, for a while. So colleagues, this is not in my area, but under a guy called Milan. And there's a sort of series of, again, I find quite shocking statistics from some of the user assessment of why is it so hard to build? What are the planning system blockers and constraints? And a kind of headline around limited use of digital, limited use of AI, limited use of data flows and so on, a high number of paper-based processes, all of that kind of, yes, obvs. But some two really shocking stats here. Half of all planning officer time is spent on manual processing and dealing with errors in applications and so on. This is 2025. The thing that drives building 1.5 million homes in the country and supporting infrastructure developments and so on, that's what people are doing on the ground. It's really tough. Lots of other stats in there you can read faster than me, but the other bit I want to pull out is only 7% of citizens trust local planning authorities to make decisions in the best interest of the local community. That's the sort of flip side. It's not just grit in the system and slow. It is actively kind of acting to sort of block the link between public and services. So it's kind of a really, in terms of a single service, a single area, there are some really painful underlying blocks for us. But we know that if we can improve the system, then there are some very big wins indeed. So Office of Budgetary Responsibility, as part of the spring statement in March, looked at the reforms that the department is bringing around planning, including digital planning, and put up some big numbers there in terms of the value of this in terms of the economy. So something like £6.8 billion into their analysis of what the economy is doing. That's quite significant headroom for state chancellors looking to squeeze money in terms of spring statements and so on, or looking to squeeze out public services in quite a tight environment. So there are some big wins here if we can get some of these systems right. What does it need? It needs a lot of hard work. We just heard about open data. Open data doesn't do anything on its own. You need to look through the processes that people are involved in, do the hard yards around what are each of these areas that people need help and support in terms of plan making, site identification, viability, feasibility assessment. Each of these kind of, you can squeeze out quite significant reductions. Overall, you get back big savings, faster plan making, faster development, faster decisions and so on. but you also reduce costs for industry, for developers, for home buyers, all of the other areas. So you get significant kind of wins back, which OBR kind of pick up as around 6.8 billion. That's a huge improvement. Flicking to sort of AI examples, in this work we've done lots on, and the digital planning team has done lots around consultation work, we've done lots around improving or strengthening assessments and so on, and getting quite significant reductions in terms of time and so on. Not things that will surprise you, but for example, in Plymouth, you looked about 2/3 saving in terms of all time on consultation, public consultations, 33,000 savings, multiplied up across lots of local authorities. These, again, come to quite big numbers. So we have some good examples of what it takes to start shifting the system and start deploying AI and so into lots of those areas. And no surprise, it comes down to things like better data and better reuse. It comes down to supporting and working with councils, local authorities, to deploy system solutions and so on. It comes down to working with industry and others, because government is not going to be doing this all on its own. And those are exactly the sort of messages that came out of the Digital Blueprint for Modern Government, which was published again by DCIT in January. And we've really started to sort of push on how we can work on this with local government as a whole. So this is the kind of second bit and the kind of last minute pitch. So the new AI Directorate, which has now been running for exactly 4 working days, this is quite early, very happy to answer questions we might not know yet, is working up with both colleagues of the department, but also across government, so the Digital Centre, Incubator for AI and so on that Laura mentioned and started, but also working with local councils, with the LGA and others, in terms of how we get this right across supporting to scale, so taking some of the pilot and the seed type work and working to scale this up across all local authorities or big chunks of them. Foundations that include data and data sharing, so working on, for example, like the Mayoral Data Council that we've launched to work with mayors across all of the new devolved areas and the local government teams in the department. Thinking about kind of security, so the local digital programme, which has been running now for, I think, 5 years in the department of local government, looks into cyber support and cyber resilience, so lots of work there. And then finally shaping the markets, so working again with examples of industry providers and services and products that we can help support. And a kind of final example from that, lots of interest in how you improve assessment, casework, take social care. There are a number of government approaches to this, so things like Minute and Consult, launched out the Incubator for AI, but there are also obviously industry approaches like Beam, Magic Notes, etc. Working with those to pilot, test, and then help scale up. Those are the sorts of things we want to do more of. Please come and talk to us if that sounds interesting and if there are links across to what you're doing. That's my pitch. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.